Dan Burden is the Director of Innovation and Inspiration at Blue Zones, as well as co-founder and former Executive Director of the Walkable and Livable Communities, WALC, Institute, a nonprofit organization that works throughout North America and the world to create healthy, connected communities that support active living and advance opportunities for all people through walkable streets, livable cities, and better built environments. In his work, Dan brings together many disciplines and issues, such as street design, public safety, economic development and land use planning, to create a holistic vision for healthy communities that are pedestrian and bicycle friendly. He is considered an international expert in walkability, bikeability, traffic calming, and road diets. Burden has spent more than 40 years helping to get the world back on its feet. His efforts earned him the first ever Lifetime Achievement Award, issued by the New Partners for Smart Growth and the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals. Additionally, in 2001, Burden was named by Time magazine as one of the 6 most important civic innovators in the world. Also that year, he became Distinguished Lecturer for the Transportation Research Board of the National Academy of Sciences. In 2009, a user poll by Planetizen named him one of the top 100 urban thinkers of all time.
Dan Burden's tour, Dan is back. We would travel all over the island in the early days. We're probably more Suffolk-centric at the time. And clearly he's done for Brookhaven, he's done plans more recently in Sunrise Highway, where we have recommendations in actually through Schumer's office to make some changes, but we've done some AARP reports that Alyssa's written and Legislative Bino is kind of taken forward with the county. So there's a lot of preliminary work that's been done by folks here, and there's a lot happening in Hempstead development-wise as we share. Dan, do what you do, ask questions, fire away, take us where you want to take us, and these guys will guide you well.
Well, fantastic, and thank you again for the honor of being able to work with you on your visions, right? This will be about the 5,000th walking audit I've led. In some communities I'll lead 2 or even 3 or 4, but every walking audit I lead, I learn new things. And everybody tells me of all the events we do, it's the walking audits they love the most. It takes things that were argumentative if they only came to testify to, now I get it, right? And we try to get a mix of people, which we've been able to do today, so that we can start the kind of conversation that will lead to better built streets, parking lots, plazas, everything. And I'll warn you in advance, you'll never be able to look at a street the same way again. Never, right? And I think the important thing is we need to see our community through a new set of eyes that we might not have been using. So that's my goal, is to show you the things you've been missing so that you can now always see these things. And I'll start with where we are. We are on what's referred to, when you think of all the properties, we're on the B side, the back side, but it's a side that, as you can see when you look around, being ignored largely. And this area can actually make more money per square foot than the front side buildings. But to just ignore it is, this is an area that's quieter. Focus on every aspect of urban design, including the backside of buildings, and all the approaches, all the streets, how comfortable it is for walking, but how well we're going to create a better social life to our streets and a better use of the streets to where they do more than just make noise and create opportunities for motors to speed. So when we get out to the principal street, we'll talk about that. Talk about the side streets. And why don't you have parking on this street? You may know the answer. If you can get, well, it may be, but let's go out and take a look. Let's go out and take a look. Motors needs typically 10 foot per lane or 20 feet. So you got all that leftover space. And pedestrians appreciate it when cars are parked. That creates the buffer, the separation. So I would look at, you'll want to do more analysis, but I would always look at taking away the excess width of a street. Now the ideal way to do the parking is half the street, the parking's on one side, you reach the midpoint, and then you switch it to the other side. That creates a chicane effect. That further slows down the speed of traffic and allows you to put in a little bit of green buffer or green space. The next thing I noticed, I've already measured, you've got one way in out, which I prefer for the pedestrian, but it's way too wide. To do a driveway, the proper width is only 14 feet, and these are 21 feet. So that creates discomfort for the pedestrian. They also don't meet ADA requirements. So a person in a wheelchair can handle 1 or 2% grade. They can't handle any more. You double the amount of energy they have to expend to stay out of the street every 1 degree you add, and every one of your driveways is sloped. And they need to be flat on top of ADA requirements. And I'll say, as an older person, I'm about to turn 80, that I have more problems with balance. And every time you introduce a change in grade, especially toward twilight, I can't see that because my eyes aren't as good as when I was younger, and I could literally trip and fall as a result of changes in grade that are not accepted and certainly become as a surprise. So already we've seen things you could be doing once you're going to spend money to make sure that you correct the problems of the past and give yourself opportunities to do something beautiful, including activate the B side of your buildings, right? So, any questions, thoughts, comments?
That was brilliant.
Well, let's go up to the street.
I have a quick question.
Oh yeah.
Stepping over there to get. What did you mean about taking this with?
The side. Notice just up above, not much extra width to that street. You've got the parking, and here you don't. And I'm assuming you want to free up some of your off-street spaces. We have way over-paved our cities. I mean, way over-paved. It creates added cost, extra heat gain, solar gain, just all kinds of issues. If we can get rid of, let's say, a third of the space paved in a parking lot, now you could have some wonderful little stores or other features that you add, or even just green space. And that's what would really enliven a street like this. So you could take 8 feet off of that side, 8 feet off of this side, and still have the same amount of parking, and bring the speed. So, did that make sense?
I have one additional one.
Yes.
Yesterday you emphasized that it's in good practice to mix your materials.
Yes.
Are we finding any difficulty in being able to ensure that the substrates and don't sink in one area and rise in others, and then creating that unbalanced pavement?
Good question. As long as you get a good base in, then you can mix your materials, and there's no difference in elevation. They stay the same.
No additional cost, no added cost to that.
I think it's cheaper.
Good. Okay. That's what I hear.
Oh, good. Okay, should we go to the principal street? Sure. The edges of this parking lot, if you to scale them 1 to 10, this is about a 2. It's unattractive. It says we're not a safe place. It's sending the wrong message. The code to copy for really good parking lots is Santa Barbara, California. They want nothing ugly in their town, and they start with the things that are ugly, or were at one time. And parking lot code, you'd have an edge, you want an edge, but it would be a low green wall. It could be all plant materials, or it could be a beautiful planter row. And again, think of the attractiveness you add. And motors will respond to something that's attractive versus something really ugly. When something's ugly, they speed up and they dishonor what your town is, right? So, okay, be beautiful. Don't be ugly. Okay, now we can go where it's noisy. Which way to go? Whoa, 18 feet. That's a street width designed for tanks.
For
Tanks, military tanks. What you've done is you've copied a freeway standard for your downtown. In fact, this is even more than a freeway lane. And it will induce speed. It makes it less safe. And also, let's take a look at the fact that if we measured all the lanes, we'd probably come up with enough space to create a buffer to the sidewalk, which gives the motors more sight lines, better turn radius, and less overall problems with what the motors are trying to do and not able to do because they're feeling induced to drive a little faster. So I would not, based on your traffic volume, and I don't have it in front of me, but Alyssa, if you know the numbers.
I think it's around 22,000.
This road.
This road, I believe.
Okay. You can move over 30,000 cars in a single lane. You got 4. Now, you can't move that many cars unless your intersections work. All the work is done at the intersections. But if you correct your intersections to where they're more efficient, then you could get this down to a 2-lane road easy. And it would be much safer. And now you could do many more things with the street, including having the prudent driver set the speed instead of the imprudent driver, right? So notice the cyclist trying to get across the street, didn't make it. And but that's common behavior because pedestrians want to cross the street in no more than 150 feet out of the way. The distance between these two signals is probably 900 or 1,000 feet, which means this really should be a safe crossing area. I've, just while we were eating here, watched over a dozen pedestrians cross the street right here. We did it ourselves. It's not illegal, but we would want design for that. And we could design for that very easily. And depending on what treatment we put in here, we can help hold down the speeds. And that's what we're looking for, is what are the right set of tools to introduce to control the speed to the speed it should be, right? Most motorists, when they're driving this street, are focused in on the signals. So they're not focused on the pedestrian. They're trying to see if they can beat that light. Now, depending on how you set the signals, they either can't beat the light or the lights can be set in a way to award a safe progression speed. Portland, Oregon has decided throughout their entire downtown, they want the speeds to be about 17 miles an hour. So you may or may not have enough signals to do that, but there are other tools you can use to control the speed. The best economic life of any downtown is when the speeds are 19 miles an hour or less, not higher. And so getting a speed analysis of each of your streets is going to be important to do. And then figure out, okay, what's the correct speed? We call that the target speed. And then put in the tools to get that target achieved, right? And if you got money, say for this road, this becomes your grand model for how you would later transform each of your streets. Okay?
Just two questions for you. One, so they're gonna say one of the things we know we're gonna get an issue with fire emergency vehicles. Can they still fit down with the changes you're talking about?
Depend on the design. I would recommend this be a 3-lane road. And then when a motorist doesn't have a place to pull in, the fire equipment goes out into the 3rd lane. No problem. In fact, many fire departments, they now prefer that over a 4-lane, because when you have a 4-lane, you can't predict at all what motors are going to do. They might just freeze up, stop in place. Now they've got to do something very exotic. Coming into town, we watched an ambulance have to jump over the center of the road and come contraflow, and then finally at the intersection come back to the side they're trying to stay on. Yeah. So always look at will the street design that you come up with help the businesses and bring back the social life of the street that's having a tough time. Good. Should we go down to the intersection? Okay, come on in where everybody can hear. Pretend it's a cold day in Denver, right? It's not. It's a beautiful day here. Okay. On every walk-in audit I do, I like to look at what the intersections are doing. This is where you need performance. And again, mid-block, you can do all kinds of other designs, but your intersections have to continue to work. That's what moves your traffic. This one is not the worst one I've ever seen, but it's also not the best. Let's talk about what's good first. You've got signals that are on mass, good. You've also got, and this is rare, yesterday we couldn't find anything like this. You've got post-mounted signals. So on every corner, the motors can see in their field of view their time, when they can go, and they can see the pedestrian. Normally, without them, the motors have to look up into the solar glare, and so it should be a standard. Every intersection should have post-mounted. In fact, Washington, D.C. only has post-mounted signals. They repeat in the median, and they do a really, really good job in Washington, D.C., which is number 2 on the most walkable city in America. They've done a great job. Number 1 would be Cambridge, Massachusetts. Okay. Yeah, they've done an amazing job. Now, they've got more lanes than they need. They've got a dedicated right turn lane here that's eating up a lot of space. You could, by taking out the dedicated right, put in a center median. When you put in a center median, you increase the safety of the intersection over 70%. And it gives a pause point for the pedestrian and allows the motors to focus where they need to focus. So a lot gets done. And again, the only reason there's a dedicated right turn lane here is totally for capacity. You're trying to get the right turners out of the picture, but if you analyze the levels of service that you're trying to maintain, and if it's not critical, then you get rid of the excess lanes. And I look at the turn lanes first. Yep. What else have they done well? I've got a list of over 17 items I look at for an intersection, and I would suggest that your community adopt that as your protocol, that every designer will always go through the list of 17 and see if they apply to that intersection or that street, whatever. Really, we should be doing that on every project we do. It's like you're not allowed to spend a dime unless you do this checklist first. And be honest about whether or not you're doing the right thing. Now, one of the things that I believe now, either the entire state of Washington, but certainly all of Seattle and all of Tacoma and a few other cities, now require a lead interval. And that means when the signals come up, before the motorist gets green, the pedestrians have a 3 or 4 second head start so they can be seen. That alone would eliminate a lot of your serious crashes. Up to 70% of all your pedestrian crashes are at intersections. Makes sense. We're telling people to go to the intersections, which by the way turns out to be the least safe location, and then we do everything for the car and nothing for the pedestrian. But if I were to rate this intersection currently, because it's got certain qualities, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. But you should be a 9 out of 10 on every intersection going forward. You really should. So we're going to go this way?
I think we should cross here first.
Yeah, let's go through the experience. Yep.
Where can we get a copy of the list that you're talking about?
I can send them to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be great.
We'll wait till the light turns. Press your button.
Now, one of the other things, to require the pedestrian to push a button is a mother may I. We should really only punish the pedestrian as much as we're willing to punish the motorist. How many times you see a motorist getting out of their car to ask permission to cross the street? When you want walkability, you want the pedestrian to do the ordinary thing. And studies have shown that in most cities, pedestrians don't push the buttons. Your elders often will, children love to, but what about eliminating the need to push a button to cross the street? Make it always. Yeah. Yeah, all of them.
This one's water.
Yes, it is. Oh, this is a silly dimension. Yeah.
When they gave up.
Yeah, that's when they totally gave up. And they're inducing speed by allowing that much turn radius and receiving radius, right? This is probably 24 feet. And your other lanes are 12 foot. They only need to be 10. So you could pick up 6 feet on each side of the street. So now you could have bike lanes if you chose, or other treatments. If parking was more vital, then you could put in a parking lane with some adjustments. So I would look at that. Notice this side of the street already has parking. It's the other side that's being punished by not having parking, right? And again, the parking's a benefit to the pedestrian because it creates a nice buffer, right? Yeah, this is crazy.
And so there are layers to all of it as we walk that are not shouldn't be a part of your decision making or how you consult us. But locally here, you're going to run into an intersection here where you have a state road and a county road. And then later on, you're going to have county road and village roads. So that adds to the complexity as to how we're able to make these type of.
It adds to the complexity, and it can also lead to lawsuits. And I worked for the Florida DOT, and we came up with a court case where a paraplegic was turned into a quadriplegic because the county and the city wouldn't cooperate with one another. So we had to let the pedestrian get into the street, but they wouldn't let the pedestrian back out of the street. And so a person already in a wheelchair became a quadriplegic. We lost $12 million on that case because we wouldn't cooperate with one another. Yep.
Intermissibility cooperation is important, is basically what you're saying.
Yep.
Have to come together.
I have to. Like an interagency task force that meets monthly or whatever.
Okay, good
Yep.
point.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, again, look how far it is to that intersection and that one, and watch what the pedestrian is doing.
Yes.
Two pedestrians are doing.
Well, they do that a lot. There goes another.
But they really should have a well-designed crossing, especially with this number of lanes. And again, knowing the traffic volumes, you'll be able to figure out if you can go down to 2 lanes, one in each direction. And whichever you do, there needs to be a crosswalk between these signals this far apart, because that's what people are doing, and they're doing it as best they can. And indeed, if you had a good mid-block crossing, it would be the safest place to cross the entire street. You have fewer conflicts. You only have one conflict at a time from one direction at a time. At the intersection, you're getting 6 conflicts per leg. And so I'm a strong advocate of well-designed mid-block crossings.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Would that need a light? Another traffic?
It would take a special, with 4 lanes, it would take a special type of light. It could be either a hawk signal, a hybrid crossing, which is signalized, or a rectangular rapid flash beacon, which is another style of crossing. But clearly you're witnessing people trying to get to where they need to be and not being supported by the engineering community.
So
Right.
on our worksheets yesterday, we put a crosswalk at that end and one over here. It was 2 that we filled in on that sheet.
Yeah, and again, the pedestrian will go up to 150 feet out of their way to get across the street. And here, a mid-block crossing would be ideal. Scale 1 to 10, how secure do you feel?
I actually feel pretty secure. I think we have these cars as a top.
In terms of pedestrian safety?
Or security,
Personal
your
safety.
personal.
But they're going
Personal.
fast.
I worked in that building for about 4 or 5 years. This area is commonplace for me, so I feel safe. But I guess your question is for visitors or people.
Yeah, the people you're now trying to attract above your brave people. First of all, towns that want people to feel secure have a rule of 70% glass
Right, I knew you were going to.
for street facing. So 70% is the magic. That is again a feeling this is not a safe place. You add in the signs that say security notice. Truly, as an out-of-towner, I would say drop the glass, make it open, and feel like people inside are watching over you.
And remove all of that from the door. And
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And make that be a town code.
But yeah, I was going to
Then give your businesses 3 or 5 years to meet the code and find out some easy financing for them. Interest-free perhaps for the first year, 2% the second. So that you get the street to come back to life. Yeah.
I think this for the whoever owns this, they probably may intend it for multiple use stuff. Like,
Exactly.
right? If it's not going to rent to business or per, you know, you could do
They're advertising, they're doing a whole bunch of things
yeah,
using this
they're probably
space. Yeah.
trying to be like lift them.
Now, so I noticed, and just because this is a rarity in any city or any state other than New York State, is all the gum. That's a New York thing. It gets copied in Miami largely because a lot of people from New York move down to Miami. But truly, out of all the walks I lead, I rarely see gum droppings. And here it's everywhere. Everywhere. It's a New York thing. And I'm not going to correct that.
Like gum and there's not enough garbage.
Yeah.
Here they pour into park and the adjacent.
Try to think through everything a pedestrian needs. And one thing they need is navigation aids. The perfect way to do that is at every signalized location, which has a signal control box, you could put on a beautiful map of your downtown with a little sticker says you are here. A city that has done that is Victoria, British Columbia, and you never get lost in Victoria. It's so well done. And it's so easy. All you do is print up 100 maps and then put them on each of your traffic control boxes. So just an idea. Again, take out the requirement for a person to have to activate the street lights for them. You're not asking the motorist to do it. Why ask the pedestrian to do that, right?
Just rely on the time mechanism.
It's automated, just like it is for the motorist already. Yeah.
Just assume there's always someone waiting across the street.
That's it. That's it.
And you want pedestrians, right? And again, we've been standing here for a while. Have you seen any pedestrian come up and push it? But any pedestrian come up and push the button. They rarely do it. So
It makes them think that they have some level of control.
exactly. And I've had engineers tell me that they never activate them anyway.
That's his stuff.
The engineers don't activate the buttons,
They don't wire them up. So most of them just don't.
so we're standing there going,
Press pressing for no reason.
DOT has told me, whether or not they were lying is another story, that when you press it, it gives you some extra time to get across the street. You gotta.
They're
whether or not
lying.
That actually, if the signal timing changes, but just let people get across the street. Don't make them beg. So this is Main Street here. This has had a lot of money.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry.
So this is receiving some new funding, this street?
No, this is actually a village road.
Right.
This is a
It's not
village
county
road, so it's not a county road. The county roads in this area are receiving.
Okay.
This has in the past done some streetscaping work.
yeah,
Okay.
it's a couple of few years.
Okay, let's go ahead and cross.
To see if there's possible that they can have a bicycle lane to maybe make the sidewalk a little bit.
Again, we can measure the street and then figure that one out. Yeah. Let's wait here.
Yes, it's a convenience store.
Okay, let's talk about signal timing. A number of cities in America that really want walking to work, like Philadelphia, they've gone to 60-second full cycles on almost every street. And they did that because they don't want the pedestrian to have to stand out in the heat or the sun, rain, whatever, longer than they need to. Here, if we took the time, we could figure out what your full signal cycle is, but I will share that it's definitely not 60-second cycle. Notice again the pedestrians crossing the street. Most pedestrians learn to stay away from the intersections. And again, there are more conflicts at the intersections, and they're often poorly designed. Yours are kind of halfway, but you can do better, right?
Because you'll see a couple of things they did right.
Notice on this street, they did put in a mid-block crossing.
A few years ago, we had a very active commissioner
Good.
Of the community development, and got this park. She did.
Well, it's pretty good, and there's a way that you can make it even better, and that would put a median nose on either side of the crossing. Yeah, it'd be like a median, but it's very visible, and the motorist knows to drive a little slower, and it gives a pause point in the middle for the pedestrian.
Yes.
So that would make this just outstanding. You may or may not have adequate lighting here, but you've got motorists that are going way too fast, right? And but I'm glad to see the mid-block crossing. And it's possible that the motorists are reading the signal and trying to get down there first. They didn't make it this case. Okay, any other things here? We're gonna find an even quieter place to do a round of what we saw. So think about what you saw and how you might be able to apply that in the community. Let's step back here a ways. Again, you're trying to keep me warm. It's a cold day. So I always, in my walking audits, want to see what people got out of it. It helps me improve the experience on later walks. But I learned so much. All right, so we'll start with you. What did you get out of the walking audit? What might you do different in the future?
I think one of the things that I really got out of it is the fact that you spoke about ways to slow down the traffic so that they're not speeding through, because that's one of the biggest concerns, especially that we have a lot of youth, and if people are speeding, slow down to the various businesses and stuff like that. So safety is a concern, and also being ways to find ways so we can have people be able to ride bike and walk in our downtown area. So ways to expand bikes, like some good take-home points that I was mentioning to Eric that I like to talk to our traffic and safety board about this stuff.
Good. And a good benchmark for you to hit is for all your downtown streets not to exceed 19 miles per hour. The social life, you just get a big boost when you get the speeds down to 19. It can be lower, but it shouldn't be 19 miles per hour. And by the way, that's the same speed as the old trolley cars and even horses would maintain. We're just trying to get back to the safest, quietest, most retail friendly and social friendly streets for a downtown urban core. All right, good. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. I think I like the example you gave about the cane with doing the parking on one side and then flipping to the other side. So
Yeah,
it kind of
chicane.
forces you to have to pay attention to what you're doing. I like that, and a lot of it for me was learning how to overcome the opposition or the language you use about the challenges when people say that we can't do this and why. You gave so many reasons why we can and overcame, whatever their hurdle was. So I really like the way you explained it.
Well, fantastic. And you can't get away by stepping back.
But I just, from yesterday, same thing. Speed, it's just like, this is the first work order I did here in Hempstead, and it's a lot of issues.
Yeah.
A lot. That's what I'm going to say.
Learn more than we did when we were normally walking it, you're learning the difference.
Yes.
You're next, and you're on deck.
I think that you nailed it. If a pedestrian or someone driving their car or riding their bike, they see something ugly, they're going to ride faster.
Yep.
And that makes it dangerous for pedestrians.
Good. Thank you.
You're right. I would definitely never look at streets the same today. I think it's interesting how a couple of feet can change an entire road and create either bike paths or even the buildings over there, own owners and how much it has an impact on financials in a city and town and all that stuff. So just very informative and interesting.
Fantastic. Would you go next, please?
Yes, beautification combined with safety is a phenomenal concept as far as I'm concerned, especially here in the 11550. I live here, I work here, I've been here most of my life, and I want to be able to enjoy my home. So, coming together, slowing down the traffic so that we have safe traffic patterns, thinking about the safety and health of our children who walk. If you're within a 3-mile radius in the village of Hempstead, you have to walk to school. Some kids walk as far as 2.8 miles to the high school, right? Other 5th and 6th, 7th and 8th graders walk close to 2 miles over to the middle school. So some children can't even turn because the cars are trying to get to work and they're turning right on red. And even though the children have the right of way to walk, cross, they can't. So all of these things have to be considered, not to mention all the filth in our village that the children have to walk through and then expected to do a good job when they get to school, right? So I learned that we can slow the traffic down, those circles, those bumps, what did you call the thing that we needed at this crosswalk right here?
Block crossing,
the nose.
The median nose,
The
yes.
median nose, all of those things, the village of Hempstead is prime candidate for legislating.
So it's hard when you go this far in rotation, but I was definitely going to, leverage the points that you made regarding the ability to calm traffic without having to always use controls.
Yep.
That there are the ability to use different material, different bump outs, all of those things appeal to me because as a fiduciary, as elected officials are, we often hear that it's too costly.
Yeah.
And that there are, you have made it very clear to me that there are ways to do things that will calm traffic, that will improve economic conditions for our downtown areas using very simple methods. And one of the other things is that you made a suggestion that I'd like to be a part of empowering our community to do, which is a intermunicipal organization committee so that we can together work through some of these things, because the complexity of our area is that we have towns, village, state, county, and so if we can get everybody at the table at the same time when we're going to come through these corridors and do the work, to maybe also commit to doing the work and being a part of the dialogue, I think it would be priceless. So thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely, and include the utility companies. Everyone who has a use of the street should be part of that coordinating committee. Because think about how many people can kill a project or water it down to where it's meaningless, right? And by the way, on the cost, just using the mid-block crossing as an example, those are curb extensions. You can cut the cost into 1/4 if you move the curb extension out from the edge, allow the drainage to work as it already does. The big cost in any curb extension is the drainage. So if you no longer need to interrupt the drainage, you save 3/4 of the cost. Yeah.
So cool.
Isn't it cool?
We're just saying that while we're looking at this too. One of the things you notice, we're still in a parking lot like when we started. There's still a very main road that we're off of, but because of these improvements, you know how much quieter it is. And for someone, like I said, I loved Hempstead and growing up and hanging out here, but it's so noisy and so chaotic. This is why I moved east. This makes a difference of making people want to be here and not have all that noise.
Alyssa?
I have to. The beautification thing you're talking about is making me think, because if someplace looks like nobody cares about it, then nobody wants to care about it. It's like, well, nobody else cares, so why should I care? So so why should I be careful for drive slowly through here? Why should I pick up my own trash when there's all this other trash laying around? Just kind of like that. It's like a self-perpetuating cycle kind of thing. Like to make the sidewalks and the places clean and pleasant and comfortable so that people want to be there and want to take care of them, like that you actually care about your surroundings. kind of makes a difference, can build from there.
Good. And the toughest position to be in when we do the presentations is to be last. Eric?
No. It's all right. No,
I'll turn to him for wisdom.
I think the piece that strikes me, because we travel to a lot of downtowns across Long Island and see the economic benefits, even post-COVID, in more folks shopping downtown, holding our own as far as vacancies. Seeing the vacancies on the very high-speed roadways here, really problematic, number one. Number two, seeing historic buildings, as I was sharing with Shelley, she was letting me know that many historic buildings here are either vacant or just underutilized or not preserved the way they should. So that's problem two. Problem three was really most striking, was there was a alleyway that could connect from a back lot to a Mid-Brook crossing, but instead it seems to be, it has fences up, garbage in it, and what is a good restaurant lounge doesn't have outdoor seating on it, which it should. And in fact, there's grants from corporate entities that invest in these things. We did one in Farmingdale, and it's not here. And that's problematic to me when a community turns inward as opposed to opens up outwardly and has their commerce function into a real main street. We're missing a huge opportunity here. That's my thoughts.
Fantastic.
It's tied to road design.
Anything from our two journalists?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm also the village historian, so I am aware of when Peninsula Boulevard was created and ate up Mill Road and Prospect Street and became this one thing. And in many ways it looks to me like the county at that time decided that because Hempstead Village is a pass-through from north to south, they've thought more in terms of facilitating traffic zipping through, which was quite hard on the Hempstead economy. What would it become a bottleneck if the narrowing of the lanes and so on, would that actually improve the traffic flow through the village?
If you narrow the lanes, the motorist loses nothing other than speeding. You have the opportunity to now do more things. We will sometimes take lanes out of a road. We call it a road diet or lane reduction, whatever. And we have never found a case where the motorists no longer want to be there. Every one we've done, we keep the same number of motorists. You might get a lesser number for the first year or two, but they come back because it's still the best road for them to travel on. And the same with an intersection rebuild. You make something safer. Let's say it's a roundabout. At first, the motorists may say, well, I'm not going to go through that anymore. But it turns out to be not only the safest place to be, the most efficient, and they make the best time once you put a roundabout in. So everything we do is backed by science, right? Yeah.
Sounds terrific.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to talk to you about yesterday's Huntington.
Oh, good. We'll talk after the group disassembles.
So let me ask a question. We have a lot of development that's supposed to be happening here. Would it be too much of an ask to ask some of the developers to help with some of the expenses of us slowing down the roads and,
It depends on what your village and county and state rules are, but in Florida, a developer cannot develop unless they make a contribution to the way traffic and customers arrive there. We used to require them to widen roads. Now we require them to narrow the roads because it turned out to be the smarter thing. So yes, based on your local laws, or you can incentivize. A lot of cities want to reward a developer doing the right thing, and when they do, they get extra bonus of additional development rights or whatever it may be that speeds up the process and makes their investment come through. Yeah, so there are different ways to do it. Yeah, good question. Well, I will close with the last comment. Again, I've offered over 5,000 walking nuts. No two have ever been the same. In fact, we once did a walking audit. I believe it was in Marathon, Florida, but they did a poor job of marketing it, and we only got 20 people. And so we said, well, let's do it again. And about a month later, we got another totally new group, over 40 people, and nothing on that walk audit, even though it was the same walk, nothing was at all the same as the first one. There's just always something new to talk about and to take away. So I want to thank you all for taking part.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yep.